Hey everybody, this is Eric Mueller, the host of The Eric Mueller Show. You're tuned into the podcast that explores what makes any successful person's inner clock tick by unlocking the most impactful tools within their success portfolio. I'm joined by two guests for the first time on the podcast today. We've got a husband and wife, James Arthur Ray and Bersabeh Ray, on the show to talk with us really about their story, and it's flushed with elements of redemption and perseverance, self-discovery and resilience. This is the business of redemption and how to come back from rock bottom. Let's head on over to the interview. James and Bear, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Eric. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure to have y'all here. And before we really dive deep into this entrepreneurial story and really the business of redemption, which is the title of your most recent book, we want to know what makes up your success portfolio. So if you're new to this show listening for the first time, a quick background and the way to view this is just think of an investment portfolio, what you invest in with money to build towards your financial future. And here on the Eric Mueller Show, I really wanted to discover how successful people like James and Bear invest in themselves and build that foundation for their success. So maybe James, start us off here. What are some skills, traits, habits, or mindsets that make up your success portfolio? And then we'll move to Bear for her answer.
Well, number one is discipline. Discipline precedes dominion. Period. End of sentence. We both live a very disciplined life, and I think if you study the structure of genius, which I've been really blessed to do a lot of studies, anyone who produces genius level results has a daily routine and they stick to it. And so that's a really big part of what we do. I get up at 3 a.m. every day, and I love mornings. And Bersabeh gets up.
I get up at 4.
3:30, 4. She's not quite
I'm a
the
late sleeper.
morning person I am, but 4. She's a little bit of a low achiever. She gets up at 4, but nonetheless, my mornings are sacred to me. I say you got to front load your day, and so if I don't get up at 3 a.m., I don't get my meditation time in, my deep contemplation. I don't get my study time in. I don't get my yoga in. And so I do all those things before I come downstairs and Bersabeh and I have coffee time, and I can go from there. But we have coffee every single morning, and it's a sacred kind of time set. We don't do anything besides have discussion and invest in our relationship. And then from there we go to the gym every day and work out, and I could continue on, but our lives are very, very structured and they're very disciplined. And one of the things I will say to you is that, and I read every night before I go to bed, I read something empowering, because the last thing you give to your unconscious before you go to sleep at night is what it has to work with for the remainder of the evening. What do most people do? They watch, the hectic news, or they go on X and watch a lot of drama or whatever, and then they wonder why their life is a bit chaotic. So I could go on, Eric, but hopefully that gives you a little flavor of what's really important to me, and I think it's fundamental to success.
Yeah, I think that really, it actually reminds me of, my mom has told me recently about that with the morning routines. And you're certainly not the first person to say that, but it is something that I know, in full transparency, I have not developed enough within myself. And, I could certainly sit here and make an excuse of, variable work schedule, day and evenings, but that would be what it is. It'd be an excuse. And so getting into a set framework, I think, would benefit me a lot. So I'm sure there's people out there listening that would also benefit from getting their mornings to set that mental tone for their day. So James, yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's really insightful. And Bersabeh, what would you say as far as your success portfolio? What are a few elements that make that up for you?
Yeah, I mean, he took it all. He didn't leave anything behind for me. But one thing he did leave out was to eat healthfully.
Yes.
You have to clean up your diet. You have to eat for energy instead of eating for comfort. And the things you watch, because we don't watch anything. We don't watch any movies. We don't watch any shows. Well, the only thing that we actually watch now are podcasts that we're interested in. other than that, we don't watch anything else because whatever.
Documentaries.
Well,
Yeah,
documentaries.
sometimes documentaries.
Yeah, sometimes documentaries, but no movies or films or nothing that's just entertainment. We don't do that.
Trash.
Trash. Yeah. And that goes for everything else. Whatever you listen to, music. What type of music are you listening to? Because all of that is feeding who you are and how you show up.
Yeah, whatever
Yeah.
you put into your mind and your mouth
Yeah,
is
for sure.
really, really important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably, if people can sit back and think and, just maybe do a little self-reflection, you could probably think of some elements certainly that are part of your daily, routine or just your day-to-day life that isn't serving you well. I mean, I certainly do have, a mindset of, building in some entertainment is certainly helpful for my mental health and well-being. I certainly do appreciate and dive into that personal development side. And the tip that you shared, James, of feeding something into your mindset before you go to sleep, I really like that. That really is kind of sticking with me. And maybe something that's not going to stress you out or raise your blood pressure or get you to, kind of start spinning about what you have to worry about tomorrow. You want to be able to wind down properly. At least that's what I would think would be helpful. And another element that kind of, teases out further aspects of the success portfolio really is at the core of the name of it is what is success. And so I'll ask you both to just share what your definition of success is in the here and now and how it maybe has changed over time for you, if at all.
I have to agree. I think it was the late, great Earl Nightingale who said, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
Oh.
And so I believe you're successful the minute, Eric, that you take the first step towards your own outcomes and objectives. Other people's outcomes and objectives will give you other people's results.
Mhm.
It's more noble. It's nobler, I should say. That's better English. It's nobler to pursue your own outcomes and objectives imperfectly than it is to perfectly pursue someone else's.
True.
And so the minute you take the first step towards something that you choose for yourself, which we could flesh that out a lot if you'd like, because a lot of things we think we're choosing, we're not really choosing. We're going by social programming. We're going by what someone else has told us is valuable or good or right or is going to make us famous or rich or whatever. So you have to be an independent thinker and think for yourself. But when you come to that point and you choose that and you move in that direction, you're already successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that it really kind of hits home with me whenever someone shares their definition, because I self-reflect and think about what I define it to be, and what is success, what is happiness, where are you going, and really to kind of piggyback off of your point there, James, it's really running your own race is kind of the way I'd view that. And I had a buddy of mine that's also he's a good friend of mine and a business partner, one of my best friends. He shared with me a picture the other day, just texted it to me, of Michael Phelps focusing on. It's a picture of him looking straight forward, swimming his race. And it said, winners focus on winning, losers focus on, what the first place person is doing. And so I think that's kind of, it resonated with me because you want to focus on your own, goals. You want to be able to run your own race. You want to be able to swim your own race and progress towards what's gonna bring you fulfillment. So Bersabeh, if we turn it over to you, what do you define success to be, and how has it maybe changed over time for you?
I would have to say success for me, it's kind of hard to top James here, but I'll do my best. Or just read them.
It's
Or
not a
just read.
competition.
I know. I'm trying.
We might have
to
to flip.
win.
We might have to flip it. We'll ask you the question first next time. That's
Yeah, do that.
Success is me winning. No, I'm kidding. No, I would say success is to have to feel absolute content.
Mm.
Not ever needing anything exterior outside yourself to feel totally fulfilled and content. That to me is the ultimate success.
She's got an incredible story of her own about coming to that conclusion too.
Yeah.
If you have an interest in exploring it, it's pretty profound. But anyway.
But yeah, a lot of people have that.
I think you won, honey.
I did.
You did win. Yeah.
Winning.
We'll score that. We'll score that one up. We should get a little tabulator on the Zoom here with the score for the interview, so to speak. I don't know where I sit in all this. Maybe I'm winning just by being able to talk and learn from people every time I do this show. So that's really, I feel like a winner each time. But yeah, maybe this would be a good opportunity to just kind of go into a little bit of each of your stories and kind of what got you to the thing. When I was researching you was really your meeting point, was kind of after what I would describe as a substantial amount of hardship or elements that, you maybe felt broken down. You maybe felt like, kind of the topic when we started this off, like rock bottom. And so we'll get into, is it really possible to come back from being truly rock bottom? Like maybe what even is rock bottom? But yeah, maybe let's start with Bear. Share with us your story. And, you were born in Iran. Maybe we'll start with, kind of your upbringing there and what led you to, eventually come to the United States and eventually meet James.
Sure. Let's see. I was born in Iran. I was born at a time where Iran and Iraq were at war with each other. So imagine one of your first childhood memories being like bombs dropping. And those are my first memories. The most horrific one was we had a bomb literally drop. You can imagine maybe if you go down your street and look 5, 6 houses down, bomb dropped there. Barely missed us.
My God.
Yeah, and so the time that I was there, what happened was Iran had their so-called revolution, which went backwards because that's when the Islamic Republic came in and took over.
It was devolution.
Yeah,
It wasn't
pretty
really
much.
revolution. Yeah.
So then they were suppressing people that were not Muslims. So anyone who was Jewish, Christian, and I come from a Baha'i background, they would either throw in prison, rape the women, and so forth. So they actually threw my father in prison. They come to the house and they knock your door down and they just rip him out of the house and throw him in prison. When you go to prison there, you really don't know if you're coming back out. It's pretty much, it was done, and thankfully he made it. So then what happens in a living environment there, the Jewish people, Christians and Baha'is don't have the other rights as the Muslim people do. For example, you can't practice the religion you want. You can't own your own business. You can't get a college education. You can't go to school. So you really don't have a life there. So then my parents decided we're going to leave. And how we left was that you had to actually escape the country. So we had to pay people to smuggle us out of the country. And I remember the guy came picked us up and it was in a pickup truck. And we had to go across the desert, middle of the night, pitch black, at the risk of being caught and being killed if we were caught. So it was pretty horrific. We thankfully made it, and we had to go to stay in Pakistan to get our visas to be able to come to the U.S. And that's a whole story in itself. We had to stay there for a couple of years. And you don't have any, you can imagine the living environment because it's a housing to begin with, and there was 5 of us in one room. It was a mess. So by the time we got to the States, we had to start all over. Nobody speaks the language, and you can imagine what that's like. I'll fast forward a little bit here for you. Given all those traumas, as a young kid, I ended up getting into some really bad crowds, gang behaviors and so forth, and I got into, drugs and alcohol and all that. And yeah, I mean, I had a lot of rock bottoms on that too. So I speak from an addict's point of view when I say if you can be content without anything, they know what I'm talking about.
That's her success. That's where her definition comes from.
Yeah,
because there was a lot of years where you couldn't do that
Oh, no,
without a substance of some sort.
No, and any addict listening, I don't care what you're addicted to, you can't have peace or to be able to just sit on the couch and be totally okay with nothing. I mean, that would be like a dream for someone who's an addict. So that was where the space I was coming from. And I actually went through a divorce, which happened to be an abusive situation, unfortunately. So all of that, then I come and I meet him.
And then it hopefully gets better, right?
Yeah. At some point it gets better. It hasn't gotten better yet. up to that point, right?
I thought you meant it hadn't gotten better yet.
No, now is
Be
a
careful.
different story. I know. No.
No, I think what Bersabeh went through really helped her understand me because I was,
Prepare me.
here's it prepared her to be with
Sure.
me because my backstory, and I'll do my best to condense it. If any of your viewers are familiar with a little phenomenon called The Secret, I was in the movie The Secret and I was a co-author of the book The Secret, and it was a worldwide phenomenon, and my entrepreneurial business blew up worldwide at that point in time in 2006. And I was on Oprah several times and Larry King and the Today Show once a month for multiple months, lived in Beverly Hills on Mulholland Drive in a 7,500 square foot estate, on and on and on. New York Times bestseller. And in 2009, I was involved in a horrible accident, and I'm condensing here as well. Horrible accident in Sedona, Arizona, and 3 of my clients lost their lives in a sweat lodge experiential activity that we were doing. We had done it 5 years prior without a hitch, and yet this year something went horribly wrong, and 3 people lost their lives. Eric, it literally broke my heart because it was a small event. There was 52 people, which was really small for me at the time. And I got up close and personal with all these individuals and got to know them. And so when they lost their lives, it was the antithesis of everything I'd ever lived my life for, to help people become independent thinkers and to empower themselves. And the state of Arizona came after me for manslaughter, which blew my mind. I mean, any thinking person knew it was an accident. And yet manslaughter, if you know the legal system, manslaughter is intentional harm. Which one of us entrepreneurs would intentionally harm our clients and think we're going to stay in business? I mean, that doesn't even make sense. And so it was crazy. And yet I was indicted, and they wanted me for 30 years. I went through a 4-month trial. You can imagine the stress, that was all about, for 30 years hanging in front of my eyes for 4 months, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. Well, fortunately, the jury couldn't find one shred of evidence of intentional harm because there wasn't any. In fact, the system was completely manipulated and misused. I talk about this in my book, The Business of Redemption, so I won't give all the details here, but 32 counts of prosecutorial misconduct, suppression of evidence in my favor, all these things occurred. And so consequently, they still couldn't find any evidence, as hard as they tried, to convict me. And they took a lesser inclusive, which was negligence. And so I was convicted of negligence, which means some things could have been done better, some things were overlooked, some things were missed. Yeah, okay, I can own that. And I wish they hadn't have been overlooked and missed, and I wish they had have been done better. And yet that's what occurred. And I went to prison for 2 years and got out in not 30, thank God, got out in 2013. And I was $20 million in debt and homeless when this young lady met me.
Yeah.
Now that's probably qualifies as rock bottom.
I would say, yeah. That's
but here's what I can promise you.
I would just say it's below.
yeah, that's like jackhammered below the rock bottom. But here's what I will say to you as a listener today. If you feel like you're hitting rock bottom, when you hit rock bottom, you finally have a firm foundation from which to build.
Okay.
That's a fact. And I had to step back and look at what was really important to me and go inside. Hey, what's really important in life? Because I had lived my life for the fame and the travel and all the praise and the glory and the money. I was worth north of $20 million, and it was all gone just like that. And so then I started thinking, hey, if it can be gone that quickly, what value does it really have? Now, I'm not anti-money, but unfortunately, in today's world, money has become God for a lot of people. We worship at the altar of money and materialism. And I believe that's why we're at the precipice in our country and in our world where we are today for many, many reasons. But that's a whole nother topic as well. But when she met me, I wasn't a real attractive prospect. I was 54 years of age, and I was sleeping on my mother's couch, and I was $20 million in debt. So, it's funny because we had a relationship show have us on podcast, and the woman said, "Well, I said to Bersabeh, I tell my female clients, don't go for that guy,
Sleeping
because
on mom's couch.
she's sleeping on mom's. Don't go for that guy." So you can ask her why she did, but she literally saved my life because she believed in me. She literally believed in me when I had lost the ability to believe in myself.
Yeah.
I'd really got the crap kicked out of me, to use a crass word, but I had really just gotten beat up and kicked around pretty hard. And so she believed in me, and that made a world of difference. And so once I decided what my next chapter was going to be, I call this chapter James Arthur Ray 3.0, which means there was a 2.0 and a 1.0. But what's this chapter of my life going to be about? And I knew I was in deep, deep need of redemption. And you mentioned that in the opener. And I know I'm getting a little long here, but let me just say this. Redemption, properly defined, is to gain or regain something by paying the price. That's how it's defined. It's used a lot in religious circles, and I'm all in favor of that. But truly, redemption is to gain or regain something by paying the price. And I think we all need redemption. Do you need to gain something you once had and you lost it? Yes. Or regain, rather. Do you need to gain something you've not yet had? Yes. So then you need redemption, and you have to be willing to pay the price, because there's always a price for the prize.
Yeah, I think it's a remarkable story, really, from both your backgrounds, and I think it kind of, that's what I thought was coolest when I was reading about it, was just that intersection of, it made me think, and Bersabeh, you can answer this, is did you see some of yourself in James when you first met him, or, coming from that abusive relationship and, having, that rough childhood where you're really just surrounded by a lot of, violent memories and an environment that probably it'd be very easy to get swept away with, drugs and quick fixes of like, oh, I just want to feel better. Like, how do you play the long game of trying to achieve success and fulfillment when your day to day is just not ideal? So when you met James, I mean, did you see some of yourself within his struggle up to that point, or walk us through kind of your thoughts and feelings about, maybe this redemption that you saw able to happen for both y'all?
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'm waiting for the answer.
Oh, you are. So I would say our pains, most likely, if I were to look back at it now, is what attracted us to each other. What did get me was that I didn't know about his story, because when I got divorced and I got married and moved to Belgium. So when I came back to the States, after my divorce, I had no idea what had happened to him or gone on with him, and it was all over the news too. And I went somewhere that I got invited to some networking thing, and he was speaking at it. It was his first time he was speaking on stage, and he was telling his story, but he was so raw and real, and it was my first experience that had anything to do with any personal development or any of that stuff. And I thought, man, this guy is for real. Like, I felt it. He was saying, I'm like, I feel exactly like that. So afterwards, I went up and I looked him up, and I'm like, what happened here? Because if you go on Google is not his friend.
Wikipedia does not like me.
Yeah, it's right in the first opening paragraph. I was like, put him on blast right at the top here. I mean, you read your bio and you have a passion to help a billion people, and that's we can get into this a little bit later, James. But I was just thinking, like, to have that be something you always carry with you has got to be difficult. And, I just think that with the best intentions, people do make mistakes. So we can get that in a second, but yeah, Bersabeh, continue on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he's got a scarlet letter, unfortunately, or fortune. Yeah. But anyway, so when I looked him up, it didn't match the person that I met. So I actually reached out to him on social media because then he was answering his own social media. And I said,
I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Don't send me a message. It's a full-time job. Don't do it.
No, but I reached out because I said, let me work for you. Because we started working together first before anything. And I went and met him for a lunch to kind of show him my portfolio. I got a little bit of background in graphics and I could do some computer things and so forth. And I met him and I felt like what happened to him was unjust and how he lost everything was unjust. So then I became dedicated to helping him to get back on top. And that's what it was. And it was and you could say at the same time I was fighting for my own unjust that I've experienced in my own life in a way, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it probably helped that I was getting up at 3 a.m. I wasn't the typical laying on mom's couch guy
No.
drinking a
No.
Budweiser and eating a bag of chips,
No,
I mean,
when this guy came
Right.
in to speak, I mean, if you could feel his energy live in person, you can feel it. I was like, "What's that? I want some of that. That's what I want."
she got it.
That's how
Got
he.
it.
Yeah, I didn't expect to get married to it, but I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I think that's probably the most intriguing part of your story, and hopefully everyone listening, feels that as well. Just the cool nature of how, you just don't know and you can't predict what life's going to throw at you, but there's definitely going to be curveballs. Think about your own life, as the listener out there, think about the random things that have occurred, good or bad for you. And eventually you live long enough, you start seeing them, and everybody has something, everybody has a battle they're fighting. And so I really think that the story is cool. I'm glad that you found each other. It seems like you were able to reach, a certain point of building it back. I guess, what would you say? Where are you at, James, in terms of when you were at that point where, you had a high net worth, a level of fame, you were kind of maybe felt like you were maybe not on top of the world, but getting close to it. I guess your perspective has probably changed now in terms of how you view that. But where do you view, James's life right now as far as being, to that pinnacle of potential? Do you feel like you maybe have even surpassed where you were before that tragedy?
Absolutely. Now, do I have the same recognition that I once had? No. Do I have the same physical accoutrements and home and all those things that I once had? No. But I'm a much better human being, and I have an amazing wife, which I didn't before. I was alone, and I was on the road over 250 days a year, living in a 7,500 square foot estate by myself on weekends only for about a day and a half a week before I jump to the airport again and fly out for the rest of the week. And so I'm a much better human being. I'm much more humble. I'm much more compassionate. When I had to do a deep dive into me standing in the desert in 2013, homeless, alone, and $20 million in debt.
Mhm.
And I came to terms with what was really important. That's that James 3.0. And I have a closer relationship with God than I had before. I have an amazing marriage. I'm still doing what I love, and I get to speak and I get to mentor people. I work one-on-one with individuals, and we do live events on Zoom now. We're not doing them on the ground. I do appearances, but we're not doing our own self-promoted ones on the ground since 2020. We do them on Zoom, but I'm still able to do, and I'm teaching things that I never could have taught before.
True.
Without the experience that I've had, Eric. And here's the last thing I'll say is that there never, in my opinion, there could not be any other situation where I would have to practice what I had taught and believed in more fully and completely than what I went through. Prison was horrendous. I write about that in The Business of Redemption. I was in solitary confinement next to death row for the first month, and because I was so dangerous. They thought I was going to whip a sweat lodge out of my back pocket or something. I don't know, but nonetheless, um, it's I have tremendous experience. Who else can say that in this industry? I don't give book reports. I give real life experience, and that's invaluable.
Yeah, and there's a film, the Enlighten Us film, that documentary basically detailing that story of I think it's even the rise and fall of James Arthur Ray. And so I think, that certainly be a resource I'll tag in the show notes if anyone wants to check that out, to be able to, dive more deeply into the details there. We've kind of, shared a little bit of it without going too long, and without getting into the, nitty gritty aspects of the book that, I believe we talked pre-interview, there might be a way to have, the listeners of this show get a copy of the Business of Redemption book, to be able to read that and be able to kind of take those lessons. What would you say, to someone that's currently going through a struggle, and they don't maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel? The best way to grow really is through, painful experiences sometimes. And when you're in it, it's really, really hard, even though you maybe can think and feel you're going to get through it. It's tough. The day to day, you got to be thinking like it's a grind. I mean, I'm sure, like you just mentioned, prison was awful, and you probably were, nervous and just didn't know what, you wouldn't have been able to predict where you are now, feeling, happier with, a partner that you love and support, and that loves and supports you. So if we have a listener out there that's really, they're at their own rock bottom, what would both of you guys say to that individual as far as how to persevere and be resilient through that experience?
Why don't you take that first?
I would say hang on to that part of you that okay, so we have this spark inside of us that's the part that keeps you going. That's the part that's you call it your soul, call it whatever you want to call it. But hang on to that and take it day by day. You can't, what we start getting into trouble when we start looking a month out, a year out, 5 years out, even a week out. You take it day by day and do something every single day, and don't ever give up. And here the good news is, like James said earlier, if you're at rock bottom, the great news is that you can build your foundation now from scratch. So you can stand on whatever it is that you build, not what anybody else has built for you that came crumbling down, because it had to come crumbling down. So look at it that way.
Yeah, the Tower of Babel, to use a biblical analogy, is going to always fall.
True.
It's going to fall. Seasons come and seasons go. Look at the rise and fall of nations and great nations, Roman Empire, even what we're going through in our world right now, in this country right now.
True.
I mean, there's always a rise and fall. And so consequently, if you understand that that's a fundamental principle, there's a hermetic law in the universe, which is part of the mystery teachings, which I've been really blessed to be exposed to, called the law of rhythm. And it says, tide comes in, tide goes out. There's a season to sow and a season to reap, but they're not the same season. So you might be in the time right now where things that seem really bleak and really dark, but every single darkest night is followed by the brightest dawn. It always happens that way. And so you do have to keep the faith, and you do have to, I would say that you have to have a relationship with, I'll call it God, call it your soul, call it your higher self, whatever you want to call that. But you have to have a relationship with something bigger than you. And about 95% of the people in the world believe in God. Now, believing in God and having a relationship with God are two different things. And so when you can really build that relationship, then nothing can stop you. It really can't. It may take time. It will take time. And I said there's always a price for the prize. The greater the prize you're going after, the greater the price you're going to have to pay. So just get your head on and take it, like Bersabeh said, a day at a time.
Yeah, the win the day mentality. I think the days that I've done that to the best of my ability are the days that I feel the most accomplished, and I don't get too far ahead of myself. And I love that, Bersabeh, I love how you said that, don't get too far ahead of, even a week out, because that's super easy. People, probably think, oh, I have my, month, my calendar, I've got 3 months out, I've booked my appointments, all these things. You can have that, you can have some foresight, but mentally, as you're attacking the day to try to win that day, I felt like that certainly has worked for me. I don't know if there's any insights or tips that you would want to share on how to best do that, if there's other than, the morning routine and being able to set the tone for that day. Have you found that, meditation, maybe talked about that a little bit in your routine, or yoga, or different ways to kind of center yourself? Do both of you practice, some aspect of that and really, kind of try to tone yourself into, kind of strengthen that aspect of your mental well-being?
Yes, we do both practice, and we do it in different ways, but both of us have a daily physical practice, which is imperative. You're meant to
Working out.
move.
Yeah.
You're not meant to be sedentary.
True.
I've been on this planet 66 years, and I work out every single day, and I'm going to plan on doing that until the day I exit. And the reason that I'm able to still, do incredible yoga postures, if I can blow my own horn,
It's true.
and bury my head on the floor and do all those kinds of things,
Mhm.
is because I have consistently persevered and stayed with that.
Yes.
Also, meditation. Every great tradition, spiritual tradition, talks about meditation or contemplation of some sort. It's in the silence that you meet God. It's in the silence that you hear from your higher self or your soul. It's not in the busyness.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's better for me to miss a few hours of sleep and get up and have that practice, because it makes me a better human being. And then the other thing I'll say, and then Bersabeh can add on, but I want to go to bed tonight
Oh.
and every night and lay my head on the pillow and be exhausted. If I can lay my head on the pillow and be totally exhausted, then I know I've given my best today.
Mhm.
Progress equals fulfillment. If I can progress one way, one step every single day, then I feel fulfilled. Progress equals fulfillment. That's such a fundamental principle. And I want to lay down every single night and go, wow, I left it all on the field today.
Yeah.
I didn't hold back.
True. Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's the same, huh? One thing I will say that I have learned in the past, 10, 11 years that we've known each other, um, is he always said incremental gains change the world.
Mm.
And now I've you apply that to yourself as a listener, to your own life, to your own world. And I did that. It was first, stop drinking or stop smoking. I used to smoke cigarettes too. And I quit smoking. And it was just one thing at a time, but every day, right? Until you're done, and then the next thing. And that was every day. And sooner or later, 10 years later, you're completely a different person. You're exactly where you couldn't even possibly imagine you can be right now. And you can achieve it by doing that.
Yeah, you're a young guy, Eric, and there's probably a lot of young people, certainly younger than me, listening to this podcast. And here's what I would say to you. And it's not going to be popular, but it's true nonetheless. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not true.
Fair enough.
Every single thing you're going after is probably going to take at least twice as long as
Yeah.
you want it to take.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's going to
true.
probably cost twice as much. That's just how life works.
Mhm.
That's another one of the Hermetic laws called the law of gender, which has whole lot of principles in it. But one of them is everything has a gestation period.
Mhm.
It takes 30 years to grow an oak tree. You can grow a willow in a nanosecond, but an oak tree will last an eternity. And so whatever you're going after, if it's something big, hold the vision, but the bigger the vision, you've got to have bigger faith and more perseverance.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think that's helpful to hear. I enjoy hearing that, because I've already seen some of the goals I have. You might call them micro goals. They are, for instance, this podcast. It's taking certainly much longer to garner a certain amount of listeners, or be able to, feel like you have a certain amount of reach or influence. And it's kind of making me kind of even reframe the goal a little bit and not lose sight of the vision, but just maybe change the path of, it's not a direct line to get from that point A to point B. And I didn't want to forget to ask you, James, just the burning question that I kind of had was, kind of going back to, not to completely keep rehashing it, but that tragedy that occurred in 2009, and to be sitting there and have something happen to people that you did not intend to harm, and then, be punished in a way where you actually go to prison. How do you, moving forward, how do you not have that impact your daily mental state? I'm just projecting onto what I feel like it might be like, and I feel like that would it just seems like it would break me mentally. I would have a hard time getting over it. So I'm just curious if that still is a issue for you that you deal with daily, or if you found other ways to, kind of remedy that situation for yourself.
Well, it's certainly something that I do have to deal with daily. We talked about Wikipedia, and we talked about, the trolls have slowed down quite a bit after 13 years. They've moved on to beat on someone else, but they still show up now and again, and yet it doesn't bother me anymore. It used to, and that's one of the gifts that came from this too. Is I had to learn who I am regardless of what you think of me, Eric. If you think well of me, then I appreciate that. And if you don't, then I appreciate that. God bless you, but I know who I am. And that's a really strong thing to have. And I find very few people have that. So many people are so worried about what other people think. And, if you live your life worrying about what other people think, then you're going to end up getting nowhere except miserable.
True.
And so, yeah, and in answer to your question, it wasn't like that I healed. You either come out of something of that nature, either bitter and angry, or more awake and grateful. And I chose awake and grateful, but I didn't choose it overnight. I was very broken when I came out, and I was bitter, and I felt like the system had done me completely wrong, which it did, by the way.
Yeah.
It was manipulated and it was misused, and that's all public information. It's documented.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, it's not what the system did to you or what other people do to you. It's what are you going to do with it? Because I realized too that if I continue staying bitter and angry, then I'm going to live a life of bitterness and anger. And so I had to forgive myself, I had to forgive the situation, and I had to forgive others. And that took some time, and it took a lot of work.
Mhm.
But I'm very grateful. I can tell you now that I'm grateful for that whole experience, because once again, as I said earlier, it's made me a better human being.
Yeah, that I think that, wonderfully stated, and just the way you talk about it, you can tell. At least, I can see you on the camera. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see him as well. It's just a very mature, kind of self-reflective way of viewing the point of, like, you can't change it. You can only move forward, and you chose to use it to grow and better yourself, and not be bitter and resentment filled. And it probably would have impacted the way you showed up, in every interaction. Nonetheless, not disregarding meeting Bersabeh, that might have changed, the complete dynamic. But even now, would you be doing things like appearing on podcasts or sharing your story? You don't want to bury it and close it off, because it is a part of you, and it's a part of, the story that can be used to better, the world, and still continue to advance on helping the 1 billion people. That is your goal. So I really can't thank you enough for being open and transparent and sharing the story, James. That means so much to me. Bersabeh, you as well, and the growing up that you had, the rough times that you had. It's certainly not something that I personally have experienced, and it's what, when I hear people talk about it, I just have such an immense amount of empathy, and I just feel for, people that are going through hardships and struggles. If you're listening out there, take the advice that they just shared, and you've heard their stories. Just keep the daily goal, progress to the next day. Don't give up. I think that this conversation, the business of redemption, how to build back from rock bottom, has been fantastic. If anyone wants to reach out and contact each of you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Well, we're going to give your audience a free copy of James's book, The Business of Redemption. You could go to harmonicwealthglobal.com/redemption and have yourself a free copy. Thank you. And you can
That's
find us,
perfect.
look him up. You can find him on social media and all those other platforms
And her
too.
as well.
Yeah.
And we're on, that's our website, Harmonic Wealth. That's our company, Harmonic Wealth Global.
Yeah.
And so yeah, go to Harmonic Wealth Global /redemption.com/redemption and get a free ebook and enjoy and hopefully learn from it and grow from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Very generous of you. And I'll tag, the link to those sites you just shared, as well as I'll tag, just like the Amazon link to the book Harmonic Wealth as well, because I think that's one we didn't get into in the confines of this episode, but another story that, really I think could impact a lot of people in a positive way. So James Arthur Ray and Bersabeh Ray, thanks again so much for being guests of the Eric Mueller Show today, setting the milestone of being the first duo to appear. And so we'll look forward to following your journey and catch up with you soon. And best of luck with everything you have going on.
Keep doing great work, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.